So I just saw the new Fast and Furious spin-off Hobbs and Shaw and it was pretty bad. In fact, I'd even call it really bad. For some quick context, the guy who directed this is David Leitch, who started off his career as an uncredited director on John Wick. Now I really like John Wick and it was a very solid action movie and a good start to his career. Although if we want to be very technical, the first film of his career was actually Atomic Blonde. I mean, he actually has a credit as a director on that one. Now Atomic Blonde was much more divisive than the very much praised John Wick, but personally I think it's actually a better film. Now admittedly I haven't seen it since it came out 2 years ago, so it will need a rewatch to confirm that, but based purely off memory I remember liking it more than John Wick. Although I would give both the same score of an 8 out of 10. From here it grew very clear that David Leitch was a very talented director, so studios started picking him up to do franchises. And this appears to be where it all went wrong. The next year David Leitch released his new movie Deadpool 2. As someone who liked David Leitch's other movies as well as the first Deadpool movie, I was pretty excited for this. And then I watched it, and I was bored. Deadpool 2 is not a film I would call a bad movie, but it is certainly one I would call a bland movie. The first half in particular is dull as hell. But the film really did pick up in the second half, and I did actually start to enjoy it after a while. If the film was as good as its best parts, I would definitely consider it a recommendable movie, but as it is, it's a movie I'll never watch again. I gave that movie a 5 out of 10 and I don't think I need to re-watch it to confirm that score. And now flash forward another year and we're at Hobbs and Shaw. I was not expecting much from this movie, but at the very least I was hoping to be entertained either unironically or ironically. And the film couldn't even deliver on that. To be fair, from the get-go, this film was kind of doomed to fail. And I don't just say that because the Hobbs and Shaw spin-off idea was just flat out an atrocious concept. I don't even say it because the Fast and Furious movies have a history of not being very good. I say it purely because this script was not going to work no matter who directed it. It's pretty damn hard to have a good movie without a good script. The plot to this movie is so paper thin and predictable that I called the entire plot before I even got to the cinema. The film is so stupid it feels like a 5-year-old wrote it. The film had plenty of humor, but none of it was funny. And if I rated films purely on dialogue and nothing else, this would be the worst movie of the year. Seriously, I would not be surprised if someone told me that there were no rewrites for this script. All of the characters are uninteresting as hell, although it's not like the acting is really helping it out much. Dwayne Johnson gave a better performance than he usually does, but he still failed to give anything close to a good performance. Jason Statham, on the other hand, I actually had expectations for. He has consistently been one of my favorite aspects to Fast and Furious, yet in this film he just does not try at all. His performance in this movie just left me disappointed. Idris Elba gives a career worst performance. Eddie Marsan's performance in this movie is one of the worst I've seen all year. Helen Mirren was good, but she's also barely in the movie. Vanessa Kirby was the only person there with any significant amount of screen time that actually pulled a good performance. The choice to have Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby play siblings was kind of distracting though. I have nothing against Jason Statham and the guy's clearly aged well, but he is very clearly born in a much different decade from Vanessa Kirby. It would be one thing if they were just playing siblings, but the film emphasizes the fact that they are similar ages apparently. Jason Statham is 21 years older than Vanessa Kirby and it kind of shows. This film also has a bunch of cameos and they're not fitting, not entertaining, not funny, and not good. And with one in particular, it was painfully obvious David Leitch just pulled a favor from someone he'd worked with in the past. It reminded me of Allison Janney and Ma if she got a lot more screen time and gave a much worse performance. The extras in this movie also give pretty unbelievable performances. No one acts like a real human being and it is painful to sit through. There is a scene where a man is kicked out of a window and no one on the street notices, despite the fact that glass is now falling onto the streets and everyone is being really loud inside the building. But no, they're all just going to walk past as if nothing is happening. Why even have them in the shot? In terms of cinematography, the film was pretty ugly for the most part, but there were a couple of nice shots, I guess. There are 2 separate scenes where we get sort of flashback style things to Shaw's past, and it's very clear a lot of effort was put into making the film look like it was actually shot in that time period. It was a pretty refreshing change in a world where most flashbacks are just filters over modern day footage. Even ignoring the framing and shot composition, the visuals to this film are pretty damn bad. The visual effects are some of the worst I've seen in a long time. There are entire shots that look like they're just CGI, and the CGI is not good. Now, I'm fully aware most of the complaints I've made are going to be brushed off by a lot of people, and they're just going to say, oh, it's a Fast and Furious movie, all that matters is the action. But the action in this movie is boring as hell. There is not a single exciting or exhilarating sequence in the entire movie, and anything that could be salvageable is ruined in the editing room. The amount of quick cut garbage in this movie is unbearable, although surprisingly I will take the fast cuts that make it hard to tell what's going on over the awful slow motion. The film is overusing it and it very obviously wants to look really cool, but it just looks so bad. Even outside of the action scenes, the editing sucked. The editing in the sequence at the start of the movie that compares Hobbs and Shaw is a mix of the start of riding the bus with my sister and a 12-year-old's class project, plus a few sprinkles of Ang Lee's Hulk. We get that you want to show us that they're not that different, but maybe a bit of subtlety would be nice. I would have suggested incorporating it into the writing, but judging by how the script turned out, that would not have gone well. The musical score for the movie sounded generic and bad, although I will definitely take it over the selection of pre-existing songs. It sounded like whoever soundtracked this movie found one of David Leitch's Spotify playlists and said, oh, that'll do. And if it turns out that's what happened, then I'm not a big fan of David Leitch's taste in music, because every song in this movie was pretty unbearable. And to make matters worse, none of them fit whatsoever, and it just made the film more obnoxious. There's a lot of very noticeable continuity errors. There's a scene where one of the characters gets a phone call from another character and they pick up the call and it instantly goes to 19 seconds on the phone call. There's another scene where some characters are getting out of a car and in the background you can see a bus passing, but then you cut to another angle and the exact same bus starts passing again, but everyone's already out of the car. The movie's plot had a lot of logical inconsistency. The film was pretty stupid throughout the entire runtime, but towards its climax it was genuinely shocking how dumb it got. The film's pacing was atrocious, and despite the fact that this is the third longest Fast and Furious movie, it felt like the longest by a landslide. Maybe if the film was more entertaining this would be fine, but despite a few laughably bad moments, the film was mainly just dull. I was not expecting all that much from this movie, but still left disappointed. I'm not exactly the biggest Fast and Furious fan out there, but at the very least most of the films are entertaining to me. All but this and Tokyo Drift clock in at a 5 or a 6 out of 10, which are not very high scores, but at the very least the films were watchable and fun. One thing all the Fast and Furious movies have in common is that they are typically very forgettable, and I doubt this will be any different in that sense, but there is no doubt in my mind that I will remember this one in particular for being the first Fast and Furious movie I outright hated. All I wanted from this movie was some dumb fun, and I just got dumb, boring, and annoying. And all in all, this is a film that in no good conscience could I actually recommend. At the very least, I was hoping this would be a so bad it's good schlockfest, but all I got was an annoying train wreck that I never want to watch again. And for the people who are purely seeing this movie to see the Christopher Nolan teaser trailer beforehand, in my screening there was not one. It's like a 50-50 chance you'll actually get to see the trailer. There are people buying IMAX tickets to this movie just to experience the trailer in IMAX. Not only is there just flat out a chance the film will not play before your screening, but you're just going to be paying more for this boring, bad film. I saw this movie with some of my family and we decided to see it in IMAX, and let me tell you, it adds nothing to this movie. You are just giving the people behind this movie more money to make more bad movies like this. Just wait until the trailer for 10A comes out on the internet. Because as much as we all love Christopher Nolan, this movie is not worth watching just for a trailer beforehand. So yeah, don't see this movie because it's boring and it's a waste of time. There are much better ways to spend 2 hours and 15 minutes than watching this movie. And I'm giving Hobbs and Shaw a 2 out of 10. That's the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe. I'm bad at outros, and I'll see you in whatever I do next.